So, Oliver, Katherine Garrett-Cox, sometimes referred to as Catherine the Great, Chief Executive of Alliance Trust, looks a little more like Catherine the Greatly Put Upon today. Why?
Well, she's changed her role within Alliance Trust. Alliance Trust, this big Scotland-based investment trust or closed-end fund, and she has been the chief executive of the whole business for the past few years. Well, they've had a shake-up of various things today, and one of the things that's happened is that the group board at the very top is now comprised only of non-executive directors. So Katherine Garrett-Cox, rather than being chief executive of the whole group, is only chief executive of one bit, which is Alliance Trust Investments. And this is the asset management part of the business which runs the group's investment portfolio. It has a big investment portfolio, and its Alliance Trust Investments is the organisation that runs it.
It's very civilised of her to step down like this. There hasn't been any pressure on her, has there?
Oh, only a little bit, only a light touch. Elliott, a US-based activist, has been hanging around the shareholder register, was making a lot of noise earlier this year. It wanted to put its people on the board, it wanted to make big changes. It didn't like the big discount to net asset value at which the shares were trading. Now they'd succeeded partly in getting some people on the board, and they've agreed to be quiet for a year. But nevertheless, you can't help but think that they're in the background of the changes that have been announced today, which aren't just to the governance. There's various other changes that have been made to sort of smarten things up, to regulate the fees that the trust pays to Alliance Trust Investments to run these assets, and also to regulate the benchmark that they're using.
Doesn't sound all that radical somehow for a shareholder activist. In the US, they come in guns blazing, making all kinds of criticisms of the board, demanding all sorts of disposals.
It doesn't, and I think that they could have been a lot more radical. It's a very odd beast, Alliance Trust. You've got this big investment portfolio in the middle, then you've got this Alliance Trust Investments, which runs the portfolio but is a separate company with its own board, and also something called Alliance Trust Savings, which is a retail savings product provider, which is also a separate company with its own board. I think they could have been a lot more radical and really split the whole thing up into two or perhaps three parts, but maybe that's what Elliott's angling for over the long term.
Well, that seems quite possible, doesn't it? Because what Elliott's done has been quite interesting if you are a nerdily interested in shareholder activists. It's had a rather softly approach. It asked for some new directors on the board. It wasn't very specific about what they were going to do. But the direction of travel does seem to be towards the investment contract perhaps going out of Alliance Trust, either because the investment services division is sold or because it's awarded to someone else. What do you think?
It could be that's where it's heading over the long term, and I think that will be a good thing. I don't think it's particularly healthy having this sort of little subdivision in-house managing all the money, and I think it will be very difficult for the PLC board to move the investment mandate elsewhere while it's still in-house. So if it was sold or even floated off, I think there's a lot more flexibility there regarding who runs this large investment portfolio, and perhaps a little more pressure to create a better performance.
So perhaps what we see here is a bit of a blend of US and UK activism, a bit of raised eyebrows and a bit of shouting going on at the same time. Thank you, Oliver.